Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I am so excited to be sharing with you some recent scientific advances that I learned about and in my regular browsing. And I was really so excited by that information that I wanted to share it with you. Now, mind you, none of this is like something that is totally new to a lot of us because, we have been exposed to functional medicine and we have been trying to do natural, holistic things to help our autoimmune disease. And there are a lot of things that, I have been talking to you too about RA, about dietary and lifestyle changes. So it's not necessarily that what I'm sharing today is something totally new. However, the important piece here that I wanted to bring to you is that there is now science actually in the form of clinical studies that are also saying the same thing. And that's why, I felt that it was important to share. All right, so let me admit to you that initially what I'm sharing with you about the clinical studies, etc., might seem too sciencey for you, but hang in there because at the end of or towards the end of this video, I have like an important message for you. So hang in there. All this is ultimately to a point. The reason I want to belabor over this science is because I want to get that message across clearly as to why RA and gut health are so important or related to each other. All right, so let's see. All right, so gut health and RA, right? What we are able to see or what we already know is about leaky gut and autoimmunity, that when the lining of our intestine becomes leaky, it triggers our immune system, leading to food sensitivities and subsequently inflammation. And that is the process how autoimmunity starts. That means like a leaky gut is a prerequisite for autoimmunity. And further, in my previous videos, we have also talked about this, that 80% of your immune system is located in your gut. And that is the reason there is so much of there is that relationship between gut health and immune system. That's the reason, because they're so like closely located to each other. Now, gut health and RA. Now, this is what I'm really excited about, is that there have been now new studies that have actually been done where they look at gut health and RA. And what these studies have found is that RA is one of the several conditions where gut permeability predates symptoms. What that means is that for somebody, who was, say, diagnosed with RA, say last year, if they had actually studied this person's gut health, before that, prior to them being diagnosed with RA, then they would have noticed that there was gut permeability. That means gut permeability or leaky gut happens first, and then after time, some period of time, then RA sets in. And they have been able to study this and prove this via studies. And inflammatory biomarkers are known to emerge years before a definitive diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis is possible. One theory dating back to the beginning of the 20th century suggested that RA emerges from mucosal tissues and dysbiosis, and only later do problems occur in the synovial fluid and joints. So there have been studies which actually show that RA emerges from your mucosal tissues and dysbiosis, meaning for some people, they have their elevated markers. And at the time when they have these elevated RA markers, they don't have actual symptoms of RA, like the joint disease, etc., or joint pain. However, their gut shows like, dysbiosis, and they also show some, changes in their mucosa, which later on then that goes on. If you continue to follow those people, then later on it goes on to physically manifest as RA. So that is like really interesting. The other thing is that a healthy gut microbiome significantly decreased in the gut of the patients with autoimmune diseases, specifically the patients with RA and SLE. So again, studies have shown that the healthy gut bacteria actually decreased. So there was a decrease in the healthy gut bacteria in people with autoimmune disease. And specifically, they also studied this or noted this in patients who had RA and lupus. And then similarly, higher levels of gingival disease and unhealthy oral microbiota are also associated with the early stage of RA. So if your oral health is bad, then that also correlates to RA. And that is something that, many people have shown that. So then there is this, and I will put in my description on links to all the studies that I am, using here for this presentation. So one of the studies here, which is a review, it actually talks about the oral and gut microbiome in rheumatoid arthritis patients, systematic reviews. So it covers a lot of the studies. So a lot of the things that I quoted earlier are from this review. Again, what is the principle, main things that this review is highlighting? It highlights that the gut microbiome is an important immune organ and plays an indispensable role in immune response and tolerance. The gut microbiome is increasingly considered to be involved in the processing of various exogenous substances, can also influence host responses to various drugs. And this is another exciting thing that I wanted to share here. In addition to RA and gut health, now what we know is that the gut microbiome is also involved in the processing of other substances, like, say, medications or drugs, and how the medications affect the person can also be related to their gut microbiome composition, and I'll share more about that in a little bit. And now further, this study that was published in Genome Medicine, by the way, it's 2021. All of these articles that I'm talking about are post-2020, so they're relatively new. Now, this study says that gut microbial determinants of clinically important improvements in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. So here, what they saw, that a patient's gut microbes at baseline, that means what their gut health, gut flora look like at baseline, and then they were administered different therapies for RE, and then their outcome of that was looked at, meaning whether, their joint pain got reduced with their intensity, frequency of pain, their inflammation levels, etc., were looked at. And by comparing their baseline, and then their microbial flora or gut flora was also compared at the end of the treatment or the intervention. And then when they looked at and analyzed all this information, what they saw that significantly different microbiome traits between patients who eventually showed clinical improvements and those who did not. That means, in very simple terms, people who responded to treatment and people who did not respond to treatment, their gut flora looked very different. So isn't that very interesting? And here, I copied this chart or borrowed this chart from that study. Basically, that's what it is saying. It looked at the microbial profile, right? Gut microbial profile of these patients, responders versus non-responders. And here it is showing the blue chart, or the blue box is the responder and the yellow is the non-responder. And these are different bacterial species that are in your gut. And what this shows that for certain bacteria, like, say, Prevotella here, which was more prevalent in the responders, Coprococcus, that was also more, their composition or their proportion was more higher in the people who responded. Similarly, Bacteroides, and then Bilophilium. So, and then there were other certain other bacteria, for example, Eubacterium, that was high in the non-responders. So basically what it is showing is what I said earlier. That means the responders and the non-responders have different composition of gut microbiome, which could possibly indicate that that also, your gut microbiome also has ultimately impacts the outcome of your medications or outcome for your RE. And there is no detailed science around all these different bacterial species yet. However, for one of them, like Coprococcus, it produces butyrate. So here, where the responders have high levels of that is shown to, it produces butyrate, which was shown to have anti-inflammatory effects. So that could be one of the reasons why having more of that bacterial flora in your gut can actually help you and give you more anti-inflammatory effect, and that has ultimately helps in you having a better outcome overall for your RE. So further, this is a great editorial that just came out like last year, April 2022, in Arthritis and Rheumatology. And this rheumatologist and researcher, Renuka Nayak, she's talking about how she's like summarizing all the research, that I just shared, and there's lots more of them. But basically, all the new research is pointing to the direction that the microbiome can either add fuel to the fire of autoimmunity over the course of a lifetime, or can reduce the level of autoimmunity and progression of disease. Meaning, depending upon how your gut microbiome is, whether it has more of the bacteria that can actually help reduce inflammation, or whether it has higher levels of other bad bacteria that is going to continue to cause you more inflammation, right? Depending upon that, you can either, your RA can either get worse or it can get better. So these questions are of clinical relevance because while modifying the human genome is challenging, right? You can't modify your genome so that you can alter your gut flora, etc. However, altering the human microbiome via diet, supplements, probiotics, and medications are more feasible. Now, talking about medications and gut flora, remember I alluded to this at the beginning of the presentation. So this is, again, another study on methotrexate and gut flora. So this was published in Frontiers of Immunology in 2021, December. And what it is studying is how methotrexate, the impact of, or the clinical outcomes associated with methotrexate is actually dependent upon your gastrointestinal microbiome. Like methotrexate can have an impact on your gut flora, and that consequently can have an impact on your outcomes. So basically, the gut microbiome can affect the bioavailability, meaning how much levels of methotrexate are, absorbed in your body and available. And some characteristics of gut microbiome can be considered as a predictor of clinical response of this drug. So, depending upon like what I shared, like if there are certain good bacteria, more of those, then you can predict that methotrexate will actually work better. In addition, even the side effects, this is again a very important thing that I wanted to share with you. That's why I wanted you to stay till the end, because methotrexate, even the side effects of methotrexate could be related to your level of gut microbiome, or what your gut flora looks like. Meaning some, if it doesn't have the right balance, then you will have more of an adverse reactions to methotrexate. And then on the flip side of it, what the takeaway is that if you modify your gut flora for it to have more of the good bacteria, you can potentially decrease the gastrointestinal adverse effects. So basically, methotrexate affects the amount, diversity, and major components of the gastrointestinal microbiota. And then there was this is also more on methotrexate, but it's actually talking about some specifics of the studies that were done in mice. So there were mice that were, they are created to be germ-free, meaning they do not have any gut microbiome because they are treated with antibiotic and they don't have any, gut microbiome. And methotrexate was administered to those mice, as well as methotrexate was administered to wild mice. And what they saw was that gut microorganisms is an essential link in the absorption and metabolism of methotrexate, because the availability or intestinal absorption in the germ-free mice was much less than the mice who had regular gut microbiome. So how important your gut microbiome is, that's what the study demonstrated. Then further, they've also done like a lot of analysis at the phylum level, which is like, it's a class of the bacteria. So firmicutes and bacteroidetes in the ratio is high in methotrexate non-responders. Now, firmicutes is generally like is a species that is gram negative and not not considered healthy. So if that ratio is higher, then, and bacteroidetes is the opposite, it is a more of a beneficial flora. So if the ratio of the firmicutes is high, then such people are found to be non-responders to methotrexate. And then, in contrast, people who respond to methotrexate, they have some certain species which are abundant. For example, Prevotella and Bacteroides here again. So if they have more of that, then they have better chance of responding to methotrexate. So again, that makes you think, right? Again, the importance of gut health. And further, the latest international view suggests that the mechanism of folic acid supplementation to reduce the toxic effect of methotrexate may also be related to intestinal flora, and especially probiotics such as Bacteroides and Bifidobacterium. So it says that folic acid also, which is administered to cut out the negative side effects of methotrexate, that also actually acts by positively altering the gut microbiome. So both diet and leucovorin is a form of folic acid that is, longer acting, and that's prescribed many a times for people with on methotrexate. It reduces the gut toxicity by affecting the gut microbiome. And there has also been reported that artificially increased probiotics intake or potentially using fetal microbiota transplantation can reduce this drug-induced intestinal damage. Basically, again, what it is saying is that, the studies show that ultimately, because even folic acid works by altering the gut microbiota, if you do different things to positively change the gut microbiome, make it more healthy, then you can reduce the side effects from methotrexate. Right? So what does this all mean to me? A lot of science, but very important, right? Gut health is important as it can have an impact on your disease severity as well as outcome of medications. So, this is, again, as I said, it's not something new. We have been talking about it all along. For all the functional medicine leaders, experts have been talking about this all along. But now mainstream medicine is talking about this. So that is like the important thing. And many times for a lot of patients, when you tell them that, okay, mainstream clinical trials, mainstream medical doctors are also talking about this, then they kind of get more of a buy-in, right? And then second thing is, which is again relates to that, because gut health is important, improving your gut health can reduce the side effects of your RA medications, right? So that is like an important takeaway I want you to take away from this, because what I talked about methotrexate in detail and how, this the way methotrexate works on the gut and, what can happen to your gut flora, etc. But if we continue to work on working on improving gut health, then it can potentially reduce the side effects of your RA medications. Now, I only talked about methotrexate in here, but I've also seen studies that have talked about hydroxychloroquine and other oral RA drugs as well. Third, important, continue to work on your gut health, right? By making important dietary and lifestyle changes. How, right? That is the question. What to do, how to do. Refer to all my other previous videos on AIP, gut health, and autoimmune diseases. Now, again, go back to AIP because, when we talk about somebody with RA and poor gut health, that person is very likely to have a lot of food sensitivities. And the first thing to do would be, ideal thing to do is do an elimination diet for a while, overcome those food sensitivities, work to heal the gut, and then start doing other things like even lifestyle changes, etc., because that can have an impact on your gut health. And then additionally, you can also and the diet itself, I would say, add a lot of what in AIP talks about is adding a lot of fermented vegetables, etc. Those are a great source of different probiotic bacteria. Adding a probiotic supplement can also help. I specifically said Bifido because in one of the studies it said that the responders had more levels of Bifidobacterium. So that's why I said Bifidobacterium. But basically, a broad spectrum probiotic is helpful. More important than a probiotic supplement, what you can do for your gut health is to actually eat a variety of fermented vegetables. And if you don't know how to ferment vegetables or on your own, you can check out my video on homemade fermented vegetables. All right, so I hope this was useful. Thank you so much for watching.